Hello once again, everyone. So, kind of keeping with the theme this week of showing things off, I figured I would talk about something that's been in the background in a lot of my vids, but I've never really discussed at length, and that being my Ecranche. So first off, what is an Ecranche? It is more often than not referred to as a jousting shield. And the reason for that being is that that's where you're mostly going to see them. Now they come in a couple different shapes. They also come in a couple different sizes, and that kind of evolution is its own sort of thing. But you do also see these used in a couple other interesting little contexts, so I figured I'd go ahead and talk about it. So first off, why do I own one? I don't own a horse. The reason I got one of these was because I was inspired to have it as a way of identification, a sort of banner. There's a reason that most heraldry is showcased as being on a shield of some sort, and the shape of shield can sometimes change depending upon the time period, the region, and also what's kind of invoked. So you do sometimes see coats of arms depicted on one of these as opposed to the classic heater shield shape. You'll also see them depicted on another form of this, which is where it's a little bit more hourglass shaped with kind of fluting carved into it. But either way, what are the main characteristics of the shield? So first off, it is curved forward rather dramatically, as you can see. Sometimes you'll see them where they also have a central ridge, so that way, kind of like a breastplate, things will glance off of it. The other main characteristic it has is its distinctive lance rest. Again, sometimes some have more distinct ones, some have less. Either way, the point of this is that it is supposed to sit pretty much where I'm holding it right now. I'll go over how it's worn in a second here. But also, this you will see sometimes held in the hand. So first, let's talk about its main use, that being worn over armor when someone is on horse. So the way it works is that it's set up. You've got a rather confusing array of straps, but don't worry, they make sense with a little bit of practice. Essentially what this is, this strap is what goes around your neck or around your helmet, so it just suspends off of you. You'll also see this same sort of strap worn actually in a couple of different contexts throughout history for people suspending things kind of almost directly off the neck as opposed to off the shoulder, particularly if you need something to be sitting a little bit higher on you as opposed to just across your back. I've even seen some instances of Norman-style taller shields depicted with one of these attached around the neck. But from there, all you do is you're taking, this strap would go over my bicep, my elbow curls here, and then I put it through this strap at the bottom. So I'll now put it on and kind of showcase how that works. So I slide it on over my head, and then I just push all of my arm through. Now I'll go ahead and loosen it so that you guys can see a bit more clearly. There we go. And you can also adjust these sizes depending upon what you're going for. So I don't have a solid grip on it, but that's because this hand is meant to still be free. So I just tighten this down over my biceps so that it kind of connects to it. Of course, size dependent upon what kind of armor I'm wearing. And same thing here, I want that to be relatively loose. So the idea is then when I'm sitting with this around my neck, it just cradles in my arm, sitting on top of the outside of my elbow. So now I can hold on to reins or whatever else I'm doing, and this covers that gap quite nicely. So if I am looking to joust, everything just kind of lines up. And it covers the majority of my torso, with my hand being where the reins are. However, it should also be noted, I have seen it done a couple times, though never off the top of my head in a historical image, but I could be wrong on that. I have seen more modern people use one of these as this on foot. So the idea there being, if I go ahead and grab hold of the spear, all I've essentially done is just given myself an extra sort of floating, almost like a big rondel or a pauldron, just kind of sitting over my hand. And for this one, I'll go ahead and loosen it a little bit more so it has a bit more movement. But another nice thing about this is it's very easily adjustable on the fly. But what that gives me is now when I stand this way, it covers the most immediate target that you could go for. So for something like spear especially sword, I don't think I would just because it's too big of a thing in the way. But this covers everything quite nicely. And I can also play around with the idea of, couching it on my own. So maybe I could do something else with my other hand, possibly holding a sword or what have you. We do see grips like that. I'll be talking about that again in a video coming up soon. But I have seen people fight on foot like this, both in person and on video, quite successfully. And I see no reason that you could not do so. Not to mention, if I wanted to, I could also go ahead and just take my arm out of this if I wanted and leave it hanging around my neck. Now, is that necessarily going to be super comfortable? No, because it is just kind of hanging there, but if I'm not worried about it for the moment, I can also just go ahead and toss it over to the side so it sits like a pauldron, you do see this kind of thing done, again, with the more Norman-style shields. Whether or not that's a reenactorism, though, I don't know. But with it just sitting there, if I don't have a pauldron, that's actually pretty comfy. And it's sitting exactly where I want it to go. I could also still tie it down to my bicep again if I didn't want it moving. But all of these are more things that you'll see done in the modern day. Again, to my knowledge, there is not an image showing someone using it on foot like this, but it might have been done. The other more common thing that you see, and I probably should have held on to the spear for this, but either way, the other more common thing that you'll see is using one of these in your hand like a buckler. So for that, all I need to do is just kind of bundle up all the straps in a comfortable-ish way. In this particular, you'll see in the Gladiatori Effect book, wherein we also see a lot of really, really cool harness effecting techniques with a unique period of armor, since they're kind of in the in-between between the most famous styles of armor. They've got early armettes, they're wearing very, very decorated gowns, etc. And they're all depicted with bare hands, possibly just because drawing gauntlets sucks. But in a lot of their spear images, which is why I should have held on to this, you will see them, with their lead hand at least, holding an Ecranche out there. Now, their Ecranches look a little smaller than the one I'm holding, but that could also just be a proportion thing. Either way, though, you'll see it held on the lead hand as they're using the spear, and then oftentimes the Ecranche will be discarded for a closer in wrestling technique, or sometimes you'll see the spear and the Ecranche on the floor as they have moved now to sword or dagger. Now, what does that get you? Well, it works the same as a buckler, but because I'm holding it like a strap, it's very much not in the way. In fact, I barely even really notice it other than my hand being heavier. I can also go ahead and feed the spear through stuff, so I've kind of got it semi-wrapped around the end of it if I wanted to, though that doesn't really get you a whole lot. As far as just putting out something that gets in the way, that is quite useful. And perhaps it could also be that this is meant to depict, hey, these are guys who were just on horseback, they were equipped for horseback, and now they have moved to foot. What do you do with this? Maybe rather than slinging it over your back, you choose to hold it instead, as, you know, having it hanging here and fighting with the spear like I showed again a moment ago, or having it out here. It pretty much does the same job. From your perspective, it covers that main opening, because now there's something that's just physically in the way. And, you know, if I put it a little bit more on top, I also have fun options, just things along that line. And plus then, if I choose to move for something closer, I can discard it, versus if it's hanging around my neck, that can be a little bit harder to discard depending upon how buckled in I am. But all of these, of course, are relatively, tinfoil hat style theory. But I personally would like to see more of these shown, just in general, because one, as far as like, a good way to display either your school banner or just your personal banner, it's unique, it's interesting, and you don't have to sew a flag, which is also nice. You just have to paint. But point being, though, it's a really cool little bit of history. It's a shield that not a lot of people think about, or if they do think about it, they only think about it in that limited context, but it is shown in these other contexts, so it is perhaps worth investigating a little bit more. There's a lot of speculation and things around it, but it is just a cool piece to go over. So otherwise, thank you very, very much for watching. We'll go over some other niche bits of history another time.